So I heard a story of an exchange student who came to live in America. And she came from a country where the religion that her and her family were a part of was Buddhism. And so she's a Buddhist. She comes to America and she ends up living with a Christian family as an exchange student. And they begin to take her to church every Sunday morning, week after week after week. It's a smaller church, and so over time, everyone in the church gets to know her as a new member of this family. And one Sunday morning, after many, many months had gone by, almost the whole school year, really, when the pastor gave the invitation at the end of the sermon for people to receive Christ, she raised her hand and she received Jesus. And the church was just euphoric in their excitement. The pastor came up to her after the service, was asking her about her decision to follow Christ. And he said to her, I have a question for you. What was it that I said that caused you to make this decision today? Typical preacher, right? Always trying to take credit for what God does. But the young lady said this, and I love this. She said, "Oh, Pastor," she said, it didn't have anything to do with what you said. She said, "Ever since I've come to this country, my host mom has been building a relationship with me. And today, I think Jesus took a walk from her heart to mine." A relational bridge that can bear the weight of truth. That's the main goal of student ministry. It's about you and I having a family-like culture in our student ministry where we have strong relational bridges with students built that ultimately can be used for the truth of the gospel to pass from one heart to another. If I was going to reduce youth ministry down to just one simple definition, I would say youth ministry is when godly adults build relationships with students for the sake of discipleship. That's what I'm going to talk to you about in this session, and there'll be a follow-up to this. So this is a two-part here. I want to talk about how do we create a healthy family culture in our student ministry. So this will be part one, and then part two, we'll pick right back up and we'll jump in with that. I remember early in my days being a youth pastor, my wife and I have been involved in Next Gen ministry, student ministry for over 25 years. Part of our ministry journey was serving as a youth pastor at the same church for almost 16 years. And during the first couple years we were there, God had blessed us with a really great coach. And one night I was sitting there talking with him, very frustrated about some things happening in our ministry. And I was just kind of ranting and venting a little bit and talking about all, what was wrong with our services and our programs and our music, our worship team and our media team and, the quality of our building and all this kind of stuff. And that's where my focus was. It was very focused on the program. And my coach said to me at one point, he said, "Aaron, I know what your problem is." He said, "Your problem is that you love programs and you use people. And what you should be doing is loving people and using programs." That was a hard truth, but it was true. And I needed to make a significant philosophical shift in the way I viewed student ministry and the values that I placed on certain aspects of student ministry. And from that one conversation, over many years afterwards, we began to shift and make value-based decisions on creating family-like culture in our student ministry. Let me help you understand why this is so important. Right, so we'll do a little bit of American history here. But if you were to scroll back into the 1960s era of American history, what you would discover, and again, I know it feels like a long time ago, that's about 50, 60 years ago, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not much. What you would discover in the 1960s is that for every 1,000 teenagers in the country, only 7 of them actually had to watch their parents go through a divorce. Well, you and I know now, when you stand in front of a group of students of any size, probably about half of your kids come from a broken family, or you might say the family's together, but it's very dysfunctional. There's not really good relationships there between the student and the parent. In fact, recent polling data on American fathers says that the average American father only spends about 35 seconds a day with their children. Right, so just think about that. What you ultimately have is you have in the seats of our youth ministries, kids that are coming. You have a crisis. You have a crisis of young people that have no father. It's a fatherless generation, right? And so even when you and I use the phrase family, or if we say, "Hey, we're like family here," for some kids, that's a word they don't even really fully appreciate or understand outside of a very negative interpretation or the negative connotation that it has based on the experiences that they've had as a child, right? So let me read this to you, because this ties right in with what I'm saying. This is from Mark DeVries. This is an older book on youth ministry, but it's called Family-Based Youth Ministry. It's by Mark DeVries, and he says this. He says, the research has proven again and again that from the projects to the penthouse, the crucial factor for kids who make it to maturity, not just Christian maturity, is the presence of at least one supportive adult. And those who make it to Christian maturity almost always have what I call an extended family of godly adults in their lives. Now listen to this. When a youth ministry fails to provide relational connections between students and godly adults, they are failing at their fundamental mission. And he goes on later in the book and he says this. He says, statistics have shown again and again that students that grow into solid Christian adults, that means that 5 and 10 and 15 years after they've graduated high school, they're still a fully devoted follower of Christ. Statistics show that the youth program or the youth ministry of a large church or a small church, the lack thereof in a small church, has made very little difference. The difference is the presence of at least one supportive adult, right? So in essence, what youth ministry is turning into for you and I is it's turning into the opportunity for us to take on the mantle of becoming spiritual fathers and spiritual mothers. And if you're a volunteer or it doesn't matter, again, part-time, full-time, but you're younger, that might be hard because you're thinking like, I'm single. Like, how am I going to do that? You're not even married. Oh, well, then becoming a spiritual big brother or a spiritual big sister. So I want to give you 3 ways that you and I become spiritual fathers or spiritual mothers. 3 ways. We're going to show them, we're going to tell them, and we're going to give them. And I got a couple points under each one of those main points. Show them, tell them, give them. We'll wrap this training video up just talking about show them. And then when we come back with part 2, we'll talk about what do we give them and also what do we tell them and what do we also give them. So show them. A couple things you and I need to show them if we're going to be that godly adult building a relationship with student for the sake of truth. Number 1, show them maturity. Show them maturity. Show them adult maturity. Show them Christian maturity. Kids are hungry for role models in their life. Kids are hungry to be able to see in an adult that person made it. Kids are hungry to see what a healthy family looks like. Kids need you. If you're married, kids need to see what a godly marriage looks like. If you're married and you have a family, kids need to see what a godly family looks like because they have no role models, right? And what American culture has done, American culture now has said to our young people, stay young as long as you can, right? And you can track for every 25 years of human history, right? You can track that the ages of pre-adolescents are getting younger, kids are entering into puberty younger, and then leaving adolescence is extending further. So now we have young people that really at like 9 and 10 years old, and even younger now with what's happening in our educational system with gender ideology and all of this. I mean, kids are being inundated at a very young age, but then they're also being told stay young and free and single as long as you can because that's real happiness, because in America we've decided to elevate and idolize youth. And so now in America, the average age that a young person gets married is almost 30. Why is that? Well, maybe it's because they have very few godly adult role models that they can look to and aspire to and say, I actually do want to get married and I actually do want to have a family and I want to do it like that person right there. So we have to show them maturity, right? Secondly, we have to show them passion. I would say to you as a leader in your youth ministry, let them see you worship. Let them see you pray. Let them see you cry. Let them see your passion. Kids need to know that you really believe everything you're telling them to believe, right? Number 3, show them your attention. Like you're a youth leader. Sit with them, laugh with them, pray with them, hang out with them, right? When you come into your weekly youth service or you're on a youth trip, make it your priority not to hang out with all of the other youth leaders that you're friends with. Make it your priority to hang out with students, right? Last one here for this video. Show them your faithfulness. Show them your faithfulness. Be consistent. Show up on time, show up with energy and focus, show them your faithfulness. John 15, Jesus says that if you abide, if you're faithful to remain as close to me as possible, then you will be fruitful. And in verse 8 of John 15, he says you'll bear fruit, not just fruit, you'll bear much fruit, right? So faithfulness, therefore, always precedes fruitfulness in your life, right? The great coach John Wooden kind of spoke to this after he had won many college championships. Reporters sat down with Coach Wooden and they said to him, Coach, what was the magic moment? Like, what was the one moment when it was like, that's it, like now we're going to win forever? And this is what he said, right? He had a 61 game winning streak, right? He won 10 championships in 12 years, 7 of them in a row. But when they asked him, Coach, what was the magic moment? Here's his reply. He said, there was no magic moment. He said, I spent 15 seasons doing all of the non-glamorous things, and I just refused to give up. That's faithfulness, right? So how do we become spiritual moms and dads? How do we create healthy family culture and student ministry? Well, number one, we show them, right? We show them maturity. We show them passion. We show them attention. We show them faithfulness. We'll come back in part 2 of this video. We'll talk about what do we need to tell them and what do we need to give them.